Bennett Davison here with the EuroHooplife podcast. We're sitting here talking to an NBA professional scout, ex-professional athlete, Antonio Williams. Antonio, how you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Bennett. How about yourself?
We're doing as best as we can while we're stuck in the home for this long period of time without the daily grind of my getting up early and staying up late, working all day kind of schedule. So we're here to just wanted to kind of ask and pick your brain and get some inside knowledge for international basketball players. As an NBA scout, as the draft is coming up, once you get past the top 10 picks of the draft, you already know you're going to pick a LeBron James and a Zion Williamson. But when you get past the top 10, what are you guys as scouts looking for? What are you prepping for? What kind of information do you base all that so players know what to do when they're out there and they know they're being watched?
So first off, I'll say, Bennett, I appreciate you sharing your platform with me and interviewing me and talking about some of my insights in the business. I think once we get past that top 10 and you get past those players that we all think are can't miss prospects, and of course, there's really no such thing. But once we get past that, one of the first things that we're certainly looking for is upside. And for me, upside is a little bit different in this regard. We always attribute upside to physical attributes. So how high you can jump. Does your body have the capacity to put on more pounds and maintain that athleticism? But for me, the other thing that I'm looking at as well, especially once you get past that top 10, I'm looking for how smart players are, because smart players get better. And oftentimes we don't attribute upside to basketball intelligence and basketball IQ. And I certainly think we should start doing that. And I'm certainly looking for that. If I am fortunate enough to get a Devin Booker at 13, then great. A player that is taken outside of the top 10, but has the ability to become a franchise player, then that's awesome. But I'm also with him, his success is predicated on his basketball IQ and his willingness to work. Because if you look at him as a shooting guard, he isn't the quote unquote greatest athlete. He's not like Bennett Davison where he's jumping out of the gym. So his game is based on smarts. His game is based on want to. His game is based on skills. So once I get outside of that top 10, I'm really looking for that. Another player who his game is based on want to and upside and athleticism, and he's improved as a player, is Pascal Siakam. So we look for things like that. Kawhi Leonard's another player that fits into that category, who people thought, okay, we get him outside of the top 10, he's going to be an ancillary player, and they actually stretch themselves professionally and be something more than what everybody thought that they were going to be. Okay. Well, the basis of that is their want to, how much they want to work. And then in the case of Kawhi and Siakam, there's some athleticism in there as well. So those are some of the things that I certainly look for. And the other thing outside of the top 10 that I'm looking for as well, Bennett, is most of the time I'm a take the best prospect on the board guy. But once you start getting outside of the top 10, most of the time with these players leaving college so early, when teams set their board up, the difference between a guy that you take at 11 and a guy that you would take at 22 is negligible.
Yeah.
So
it's very finite. With that being, not a lot of differences.
It's not a lot of difference. So and that's a primary function of, hey, I'm not against Bennett guys getting their money, but it's a primary function of guys leaving early and, jumping off the porch per se too early. They weren't like those, Arizona teams that you played on where it was youth and experience mixed together and you ride that to the title. It's very rare to see that today. So most of the time when these guys come out, they're not ready. So you really have to be able to ascertain if they're in our program and we put the right infrastructure around them, will they help us in a couple of years? Now, if they help you earlier than that, then great.
But you also know coming in that a majority of those players that are going to be past the top 10 are going to come in and they need a few years in nurture to put some size on to hit. It's just like coming from high school to college. There's that puberty and that maturity level. But then there's another double jump when you got to go from college to the professionals. Well, let's finish this up. And as a scout, and you're looking at these, maybe even just an NBA summer leagues, or you are up in the college stands watching these college players play, or even over in Europe, and you have to fly over to Europe to look at some possible Serbian or German players. As you're sitting up in those stands, what are you talking about with other scouts? Like, what are the things that, like, as a basketball player, I've never sat up there, but I can only project of what I think you guys are saying. What are you guys really saying up there? Is it a copycat world as much as you think it is?
Oftentimes it is, and so it is and it isn't. So I'll say it like that. A lot of times when teams see example, and you know this, Bennett, this is sort of going into our generation a little bit because of the success, the function of how physical the league was back in the 90s. And the other thing is the success that the Chicago Bulls had with this particular formula that I'm alluding to. Every team in the league started to look to go with big guards, 6'5" point guards, and because of the success that the Bulls had. So there is a lot of copycat format going on, but then also too, teams also like to take their own philosophy and try to pour that into their approach on the floor. And sometimes it's with great results, and sometimes it's not so great results. So it kind of goes both ways. It depends on the team philosophies and the team principles. For me, one of the things that I would talk about a lot, Bennett, is when I'm watching those summer league games and I'm watching whether it's players that I'm looking at a player that we drafted with a high pick. I'm looking at them through a completely different lens than a grizzled vet that's trying to make an NBA team, or a player that's in Europe and trying to come over and make an NBA team. I look at them through different lenses because the experience, the maturity, all those things that you talked about earlier all come into play when you're looking at players that have been around the block some. And so especially when I'm looking at a player that's a vet of an NBA team trying to make, or a vet of a G League team, or a veteran of a European club, one of the things I'm looking at is, and I at least talk to scouts about, is even if you are a great scorer, are there other aspects of your game that we can leverage for success for our team? Because the reality, Bennett, is even if scoring is your calling card, and I use my experience when I was with the Suns as an example, we were going young and building through the draft. So when I was evaluating players, I would look to see, are there other things besides scoring that you do? Because you're not going to come to our team and be the first option. We got Devin Booker on our team. This guy scored 70 points right before he was about to turn 20. So you're not coming on our team and impacting us through scoring. So doesn't mean you can't stretch yourself into that role, but what is it that you can do first to get yourself on the floor to positively impact our team and then grow into that role as a scorer?
How thick is your resume on other attributes, whether it be ball handling, pressure defense, whether it be
rebounding, right? Blocking shots, positional defense. Do you understand that? Can you move without the ball? Can you get your shot efficiently without getting 8 or 9 or 10 dribbles to get your shot off? And oftentimes you'll see players that their calling card is scoring, and you see this when they're actually making that jump from college as well. There's a reason why most of the time, Ben, and not all the time, but most of the time, the guy that leads Division I in scoring doesn't make an NBA roster, because the only way they can get off, or the only way they can be successful, is by being the primary scorer. And so oftentimes when we are looking at players that are trying to make that jump, or we're looking at summer league prospects, we are looking at, okay, and it's a fine line. You certainly have to be confident in yourself and in your abilities if you want to be part of that 470 club, 470 or so players in the NBA. So you have to be confident, but also you have to be versatile enough and you have to have the right disposition to at least initially accept the role.
Awesome.
And that's a hard thing for you to be uber competitive and also accept the role. That's a hard line to toe.
Yep.
So I'm looking at that a lot. I'm talking with scouts about that a lot.
Okay.
Especially when we're looking at players that they're trying to make the jump from Europe to the NBA.
Awesome. That is pertinent information, and this is some of the stuff that you figure out throughout the years, and you always know that people are looking at. But it's also just to hear it from someone who does this on a yearly and a daily basis. Well, how would players get in contact with you if they had some questions? What's the best form of contact for you? And I'll be putting this up on Facebook, YouTube, and all the pertinent places so that people can learn from your insight.
Appreciate it. Thank you. They can reach me on Instagram, A.Williams Basketball, and the same on Facebook, A.Williams Basketball. And it's spelled exactly how it sounds. I'm also on LinkedIn, of course, Antonio Williams or A.Williams Basketball on LinkedIn. Twitter, same thing. So all the different social media platforms, I have a presence there, and I'd be more than willing to ask any questions, or if it's you want me to look at your video and give you my insight or what I think about you as a player, I would be more than willing to do that, because as you know, Bennett, these things weren't available to us when we were playing.
Yeah.
So
you just had to take the agent's word for it.
Right. So really being able to take your destiny into your own hands was something that wasn't available to us, and I'd be more than willing to try to help anyone that reaches out, for sure.
Antonio, appreciate your time and energy. Let's wrap this up. Thank you for your time and energy today.
Thank you, Bennett. I appreciate you again sharing your platform. Stay healthy, stay safe, and let's talk soon.
Will do. Bye.
Right.